Hi, I'm Doc Edwards from Mama's Chiropractic, and I want to introduce you to an examination that we'd like to perform called a food sensitivity test. So, food sensitivity testing is different than allergy testing. What we're trying to do is basically figure out if you or your child's body is reactive to something, if there's something that it works with versus something that it doesn't work with. See, food allergy testing looks for something different. Food allergy testing is looking for usually two chemicals inside of the body, IgA or IgE, they're called. They're what they try to pick up with a skin prick test or a blood test. They're basically looking to see if the body's immune system in those two specific arms are reactive to something. And one of the concerns, if it is reactive, is that it can create a cascade of fight or flight responses in the body that leads to something they call anaphylaxis. That's a dangerous situation. The lungs will swell up, they'll close off, they'll constrict the airways. It can be deadly in some cases. What we look for is something called a sensitivity. So, a sensitivity is a different set of responses. A sensitivity is something more like a rash, or you'll see it with allergies, atopic illnesses, they're called, asthma, that sort of thing. That's my story. I have a sensitivity to something like dairy, right? If I have a cheese pizza, I am super stuffy. I get eye boogers, when I wake up, sleep in my eye, that kind of thing. Children can be a little more prone to illness. And so, what we want to find out is if there's something that is creating some kind of chemical stress inside a child's body. The main reason for this is because we talked about how chemical stresses can create subluxations. So, if you're pregnant and your body's reacting funny to something that ordinarily didn't have a problem with because your immune system's changed, that's something we want to find out. If you're not pregnant, if you're just a regular non-pregnant adult walking around, but you're struggling with some things, one of the things that we're trying to find out is it possibly something that you're eating? If you're a little kid and you're sick all the time, like I was, and accidentally what we're doing is feeding you something your body's not really reacting well to, that's important. If we got a little baby who's gassy or colicky, and maybe their body just isn't quite ready to break down a specific carbohydrate or a specific protein inside mom's milk, then we'll do something like a food sensitivity test. I've been doing it for 16 years, and I'll tell you something completely honestly. I'm always skeptical about whether or not it's going to work. But so far, what we've had in our office is a whole bunch. I mean, we're talking like hundreds of patients that have gone through our offices in the last several years that have gone through the testing and have found that they take the stuff out that we find are either positive or something we call threshold, then things start getting better. Their kids start behaving differently. Allison, who's been working in my office, she's the longest term employee, will be happy to tell people about the story of her first son and how within days the terrible eczema he had started going away when she started shifting her diet. In fact, what we're going to do is I'm going to show you a video where I'm with her second son, Carter, and he's so used to doing this, he actually does it himself. It's pretty awesome. I want to explain also what to expect. So what you're going to see in the video is me testing Carter. When we have children who are under 7 years old, their nerve systems haven't completely developed in an organized fashion yet in order to be predictable. So we'll do something called surrogate testing. And what I'd like to show you is a video I made a long time ago. And with that, I had probably the best demonstration I've ever seen. We're familiar with the idea that electricity is running through our bodies, right? Like if you go to do something like an EKG, they put electrodes on your skin and they pick up the electrical activity in your heart. Or an EEG is something that they use to pick up brainwave activity. Your body constantly transmitting electrical impulses. And the whole basis behind how this version of indicator muscle testing works is the whole idea that if the nerve system's electrical, then we can do some things to the body to tell whether or not that electricity is generated at like 100% or if it's maybe knocked down, just a couple points. So when we do our testing, what we're looking for isn't to see if someone is super strong and then goes floppy like a spaghetti noodle. We're just looking to see if maybe instead of being a 5 out of 5 contraction, maybe they're down to about a 4 out of 5. We like to use the little finger and thumb for the way that we test, but you'll find other people who use something like the arm stuck out to the side or maybe the leg, the hamstring. The basic idea behind that is anything that has multiple areas of nerve flow using some muscles that will contract, it can be useful because if you have a subluxation in one area, then that would Obviously, if you only had one muscle and one nerve and that nerve was getting subluxated, it wouldn't work right.
Kyle and I are going to take this little UFO ball you can get for 99 cents online. When you push both sides of the electrode, it makes the light, it makes the sound. So if I touch one end of it and Kyle touches the other end, nothing really happens until we complete the circuit by me touching him. And then we can do the same thing with Amelie. And you touch me, there we go. And if I touch her body, we make the light go again. So I let go ahead, keep your finger on there. I let go, I touch her. So that completes the circuit.
So when we do our testing, there's a couple things that we want to keep in mind. The whole concept of this starts way back in Albert Einstein's equation. It's the simplest way that I can explain it. Energy is equivalent to mass, and then they have so much energy inside that they had to add on this big powerful number, which is the speed of light, and not just by itself, but squared. So E equals mc squared. So there's so much energy inside matter. That's the whole concept behind his equation. Now, the way that I want to point this out, though, is that there's also saying there's an equivalency there, that properties of energy and matter must also be equivalent, just in different forms, if this equation is true. So two big things that we think about with energy are that there is a wavelength to energy, that if you look at something like visual light. So there is a difference between red and the color blue because of the wavelength as it hits your eyes. There's a difference between things that you can't see in the non-visible energy spectrum, like X-rays or microwaves that you can't see at all. When we talk about the other property, frequency, that's how quickly those wavelengths will vibrate, how quickly they're packed together in a given amount of time, called a cycle. So when we're thinking about waves, the way that I picture it is like splashing around the bathtub. So if you're splashing around the bathtub and you have waves that are going up at the same time and down at the same time, and they crash into each other, in physics, we call that constructive interference, because what's going to happen is those waves being in phase are going to go twice as big and twice as low. It's constructing, it's building up that waveform. The other thing that can happen is something in physics we call destructive interference. That's what happens when a wave is at a peak and crashes into a wave that's at its trough. So when those guys meet each other, instead of going twice as big and twice as low, they flatten each other out. So that destructive interference, or a version of it, is what we're looking for when we're doing indicator muscle testing. We're looking to see if we have two pieces of matter, your body and whatever this thing is that we're testing, and when they meet each other in a very sensitive spot where the thymus and the thyroid are for this testing, if it flattens it out, we have what we call a break, a positive, or if we stay strong. Now there can be middle ground in here. Middle ground, we call that a threshold issue. So threshold issues, generally, if you think in terms of how the immune system is reacting to whatever's coming into the body, sometimes it just says no. It's as good as this is as good for me as antifreeze is, right? That's absolutely no, it's a positive. We got to keep that out. But some things will build up. There can be a tolerance. But if it's the fourth or fifth ingredient, we don't really need to worry about it. But if, let's say, you've got a sensitivity to something like soybeans, right? And so a little bit of soy is okay, but a whole bunch isn't, then if you go and you have some edamame, that's probably a bad idea. But if it has soybean oil in it, like the fourth or fifth ingredient, not that big of a deal. We just know that what ends up happening is it builds up in the system and eventually it has to purge out. So during the first 3 months or so, what we usually recommend is that you completely eliminate all the stuff that you have on your list that we give you. Completely cut out the things that are positives and the things that are thresholds. After about 3 months, one of the recommendations that I've seen to be effective is that you start reintroducing the things that are thresholds. And then we usually want to do a retest after about 6 months to see if we still have any positives. So what I really have found to be effective, because this is what happened with children like Lawrence, Allison's oldest son, and some things that we're working with some adults too, and working with pregnancy, is really to do a rebuilding. See, my philosophy of healthcare isn't to just live a life of avoidance. I did for a while. And when I first started doing food sensitivity testing, I was just saying, well, let's just keep that out. And that's how I lived. I was just dairy free for most of my life once I figured out it caused me a problem. But what I have figured out is that you can actually start building resilience if you start rebuilding the building blocks of your gut, of your immune system. It all starts to change how the body reacts and responds to things. We see that happen really quickly in newborns and babies, happens really fast, doesn't usually end up being a long-term issue for most of those kids if we catch it early. For toddlers, like my son, who also had a dairy issue, he is way more tolerant of dairy than my body is. He doesn't necessarily react the same as I do if he has the equivalent amount of dairy. And that's because we did some very important things. Number one of the things that we gave him was omega-3 fatty acids. He has fish oil every day. It's the glue that helps to hold on the Velcro pieces I'm just about to talk about. Those Velcro pieces, these are the ones that help the cells hold tight, really together, really, really well, so you have a good functioning organ. Also, those Velcro pieces float around in the spaces in between the cells. It's those Velcro pieces that your immune system, when it's looking to cause inflammation, it's what they attach to. So if you have plenty of those Velcro pieces floating around in between your cells, then the immune system gets its receptors filled up and then it just ushers out the inflammation. So it allows your body to do the repair. Those Velcro pieces are basically on the insides of fruits and vegetables. They're inside things like aloe. What we do with the children here in this office is we usually recommend that they get on ambertose. So ambertose is a glyconutrition product that we've been using for years and years. We use it in everything from our fertility program, but I got to tell you, the whole reason that I started that whole protocol was really to help kids that I was struggling with when they would go through their testing at 6 months. They would be completely fine to the thing they'd eliminated, but their immune system was picking a fight with something else. So if that's the case for you, there's usually a recommendation: omega-3 fatty acids, start juicing, crack open those fruits and vegetables, get on the ambertose. Also, vitamin D is really important for immune system regulation. So we usually put our patients on a 120-day protocol of eating cleanly and starting up with those things on a daily basis. We have seen some amazing results with that. So that's the phase two. If you get to the 6 month testing and everything's not cleared out, it might be something to consider. Okay, so what I'd like to do is show you Carter with his video. It's really awesome. Now, again, keep in mind that when we're testing an adult, we usually just go ahead and put the object here on the thymus and thyroid. We look to see, do we have a break when we do this? Is it 5 out of 5 strong or 4 out of 5 strong? But Carter has been watching this. He's been our office baby his entire life. He's been watching me do this so well that you won't believe what he does when we start getting the pieces of plastic bags out and go ahead and do the testing. Carter's doing his own food sensitivity test.
Put it in.
Basket. There
Oh.
you go.
There you go. Here, look. Here. Oh, thank you, Robert.
So nicely done. Thank you.
Back. Okay, put it in there.
All right, so I hope you enjoyed that part. So a couple things you might have noticed. One is that we use plastic baggies to put our foods in. There are some objects that we already have here in the office. They're all the dry good things. We went to one of the health food stores and we got everything in their bulk bins and we put them in little baggies. We can use plastic because plastic is an absolutely fine like material in order for those objects to go ahead and talk through. Think of it like electricity, right? So really good insulators, things like glass, prevent the electricity from passing from one thing to another. But things like metal, which do conduct electricity really well, are absolutely fine. It's all about how the electrons can move. If they can move freely and bounce around, then we're going to be able to pick this up. So when you're bringing things in, you can bring them in, like if it's let's say you've got a pepper and you want to test with that, go ahead and just bring in the whole thing. But really, if you just want to put things in little tiny plastic bags, that's super helpful too. I dislike the plastic waste just as much as you do, but it seems to be good, especially if we have a child who has skin reactions. We don't like to have a whole bunch of loose things in there. I also don't have anything that's perishable. So what I need you to do is separate out egg yolk and egg white and put those in separate containers. I really would advocate for you bringing several types of dairy in. So not just cow dairy too. For me and for my son, what we've noticed is that there is a difference for how our bodies react to cow products versus goat and sheep. My body tolerates goat and sheep much better than it does cow products. There's also a difference in fermentation. So harder cheeses, things like Parmesans, are fermented. They have a lot of bacteria in them to help our bodies break it down. Yogurt is also something that is fermented, and there's got a lot of good bacteria to help our bodies break it down. In fact, humans have been using fermented versions of foods in order to help digestion for a really long time. That's usually one of the reasons why, things like cabbage gets turned into sauerkraut, or soy gets turned into miso. Yogurt, dairy gets created because a lot of humans had a hard time breaking down just regular old cow's milk. So really interesting to think about it that way from an evolutionary standpoint. The big four that we talk about: gluten, egg, dairy, and soy. We have the gluten, we've got the soy, so we can test those, but we really do need you to bring in some versions of that. Also, I don't have any produce in the office. And one of the other, like if we're going to talk about kind of your top 5 things also that we'll check out, nightshades are in that category. So things like tomatoes, I want you to bring peppers, I want you to bring eggplant. Mango isn't in that family, but also tends to create the same kind of poison ivy response that nightshades do. So that's always a good one to bring in. Basically anything else that you find that you normally eat in your day. A lot of packaged foods contain multiple things, and it's really useful for us to find out, hey, listen, we have this ingredient's positive. Is this a positive problem for you, or is it threshold when you eat your, say, Lara bars or whatever? So I don't need a whole ton of stuff. I just need just a little bit, but feel free to bring in a variety. I'd also, just by testing babies for long enough, have noticed that it's not necessarily important to refrigerate everything. If we have to test you or a baby, that stuff can be pretty cold. So if you want to just put it in one of your cooler bags, just have it in your cooler. You don't have to put freezer packs in there. It'll last. It'll be fine. So if you have any other questions, please give us the office a call. We always send out a list of things that you should kind of just be mindful to bring in, things like cruciferous vegetables, broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, that kind of stuff, because sulfur is a big molecule, and for some people it creates some gas issues. So any of those kinds of things on the list, I do want you to bring in a small amount as well. All right. Best of luck. I look forward to either seeing you myself with the testing, or one of our associates. We've all been trained in doing this for a long time, and really looking forward to doing this part of your healing journey with you.